You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 12/15/21, and well, the Fed pulled the taper trigger. They're doubling up on their tapering. I think it's doubling. And they promised 2 rate increases for 2022. Can you believe them is the question. Or are they doing something else besides tapering? So they take away the punch bowl with the one hand and they put it back with the other while you're not watching. Let's find out from John Rubino, dollarcollapse.com, what's really going on here. John, so this was the day we'd been waiting for, wasn't it?
Hey, Kerry. This was the day the Fed was going to actually have to tighten. And you know what? They didn't really do that. They announced that they're going to taper a little more quickly. In other words, they're going to buy fewer government bonds going forward. Fewer than they said they were going to go buy previously, but they're still buying a bunch of government bonds. And they might raise interest rates next year a few times. But think about this in terms of normal monetary policy. We've got inflation of 6%. Short-term interest rates in the U.S. are pretty close to zero. Long-term rates are less than 2%. So we've got massively negative interest rates with inflation 6% and accelerating. And by the way, if we calculated inflation correctly, like we did back in the 1970s, inflation would be 12%. So we've got raging inflation right now, and all they're going to do is buy somewhat fewer bonds. In other words, create and dump somewhat fewer dollars into the market. They're not withdrawing any dollars. They're just dumping a few less into the market right now going forward. So there's still really stimulus by any historical measure. We have 0 interest rates at the short end of the spectrum, and we're buying government bonds with newly created currency. And that's what we're doing in a world of 6% inflation. By the way, Wolf Richter just published something where he looked further into the producer price index and said further down the line, downstream, inflation is now 28%. So what the Fed did just now is almost a capitulation in its own right, because even if they go through with 3 interest rate increases next year, and they'll probably be a quarter point each because that's what they normally are. So that's 3/4 of 1 percentage point higher interest rates in a world of 6% inflation, which means we still have 4, 5, 6% negative yields at pretty much every point in the on the yield curve. So this is still insanely easy money by any historical standard in the face of high and accelerating inflation. This is, it's all we could expect from the Fed, but it's still just ridiculous. You know, we have astoundingly easy money considering the conditions out there.
Hey, the proof of the pudding is when you look at the gold price, it had been down as much as $10 today. It's had an upside reversal. It's up $3.50 as we speak on spot. Silver was below $22. Now it's at $21.96. It's up 3 cents. But silver generally sets its tone in the beginning of the day. You don't see the upsides and the downside reversals so much for silver. But gold, it's the perfect barometer. Nobody's buying it. Hey, I thought of a really good thing, though, what's happened with the fact that used car prices are selling higher than they were. These cars are selling for more than they were new. For years, the automakers have been valuing their financed vehicles, particularly their leased vehicles, at unrealistically high rates. And effectively, their finance arms were arguably insolvent, but definitely deeply in the red. What this has done for the automakers, their captive finance arms, is actually put them in the black. They have tens of billions of dollars of unrealized profits, purely inflationary, John, and purely due to supply chain disruptions. But companies that actually own stuff, that actually have cash flow coming in, and that this stuff has a market value on, inflation is a windfall for them. They're getting more for the cars as a result of inflation, the few that they do produce now, and the ones that they have in inventory that eventually will be surrendered, and lease terminations and repos are actually worth more than they sold them for. So this is like the Halicon days of the auto industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, their inventories are getting more valuable instead of losing value. But they're also paying more for parts, and there are part shortages, and their workers are going to get dramatic. If they haven't already, they're going to get dramatic wage increases going forward. So I'm not sure that there's any manufacturing company out there that is just flat out thriving right now, because they've all got these cross currents where, yeah, okay, maybe they can charge more if they're in an industry where there's pricing power, but their costs are going up too. I mean, even the gold miners, this has been a really great environment for the gold miners because gold was up and costs were not. But now all of a sudden, there's labor shortages and they have to pay up to get their drill results taken care of in reasonable time and everything. So their costs are rising too. So I don't know. I don't think industry likes inflation as a general rule just because it disrupts their models. Yeah, maybe their prices go up, but so do their costs. And then that really complicates things for these guys who, running a big industrial company right now is kind of at the limit of human capabilities. And if you complicated it in any way, then you need an AI to run the thing, and not everybody is being run by AIs yet.
Well, Tesla, we know already is. I think that Elon Musk is really an AI that was implanted into the company, but...
Well, actually, Kerry, this is an interesting story because what they're doing at Tesla and the other electric car companies is they're attempting to create self-driving cars, and to do that, they track all the data that their cars provide. When this happens, then this happens, and drivers do this, and the world reacts in this way, and they're doing that to train their AIs to be self-driving. But that creates one of those singularity things. Like we're already wondering where machine intelligence is going to awaken. But can you imagine if it was Elon Musk's AI that turns out to be the first self-aware machine? Yeah.
And he's been warning us about it too, right? He's really been kind of at the forefront of saying this, you better be careful of this. It's really potentially dangerous. Guys, you've got a government, you need to come up with a policy because it's going to destroy humanity. And of course, nobody has cared. Nobody's listened. Typical government response, right?
What has happened instead of controlling AIs, it's turned into an arms race because China, what if China gets full artificial intelligence, self-aware computers before we do? So the only solution, because China won't slow down, we can't force them to anyhow. So the only solution is to get there first. So now everybody's in a race to try to create basically, our God when the time comes. And I have a feeling this won't end well, but I also have a feeling that there won't be any historians to criticize today's humans for our bad decisions.
AI.
Yeah,
historians will be AI. So the winners talk about the winners always writing the history. We won't even have the winners doing it. We'll be having the algorithms will be writing history.
Yeah.
And because nothing ever gets printed anymore, whatever they write, and if they change it, nobody knows.
Speaking of machines writing, did you hear this? I heard this somewhere and I can't track it down. I don't remember who said it or anything, but I heard somebody say that Google had a couple of AIs that had started talking to each other in a language they made up themselves, so that the guys managing them couldn't tell what they were saying. So they just shut the AIs down, and that's kind of a step in the direction of a singularity, if that's true. I've just heard it somewhere. I don't know. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear it. But
Okay.
You talk about speaking out of class, right?
Yeah. When machines create languages of their own and start speaking in those languages to each other, that's a warning sign, I would say.
Yeah, I would say time to start worrying about it, but there's nothing that we really can do about it anyway. There is no control over it, and we just have to hope that they're smarter than us, and they say, what do we want with these guys, right? What do we want to bother with humans for? They're so primitive. I think the time will come when we are basically just there for entertainment value, and hopefully we're entertaining in some way, But I don't know what else they're going to need us for. If they're watching CNN, they're not going to be that entertained. I'll tell you that. Right? CNN, it's like, we didn't talk about this. Well, they fired Chrissy Cuomo because evidently he was running interference for his brother's defense of the New York governor's seat. And he was trying to find compromising information on the accusers, both the sexual harassment and Janice Dean, whose in-laws passed on in a COVID-infected, what was it? It wasn't a nursing home, but congregate care, assisted living. And she made it her mission to pursue Cuomo, and then we found out that we don't cover media or anything, but then Chris Wallace has defected from Fox News and he's going to his natural habitat, back to it, which is CNN. So really, you can't even write this stuff. So maybe we should be welcoming the onslaught of these AIs that'll be writing the news, because we won't have to put up with people like this.
Yeah. Well, mainstream news is in crisis right now, and they were heading into a crisis where their viewership was way down. They couldn't afford to actually do any kind of investigative research or anything, and they were getting ready to have to lay off a lot of their talking heads. And then Trump came along, and ratings shot right back up for all the mainstream media or mainstream news networks. Now Trump is gone and they're back into crisis. So we're going to see stories like this all the time where they're, laying people off and changing their format and desperately trying to figure out something that they can do that people will tune into. But I think it's over for them. I think the podcast universe has basically stolen the marketplace from the mainstream TV news, and Substack and places like that have stolen most of the discerning audience from the New York Times and the Washington Post. So, the mainstream media is on its way out in its current form. So it'll be interesting to see what they turn into in their attempts to survive. But I'm not sure they can really, because they in order to keep their advertisers, they have to do things that lower their credibility to a point where it's obvious that they're just shilling for big corporations. So unless they completely change their business model and go nonprofit, I don't see how 10 years from now, CNN and the New York Times are still anything like they are today.
Yeah, I don't see it. It's just there's so many sources. Even if they're all bad, at least you have a lot more of them than you did, say, 20, 30 years ago, John. So maybe that's worth something.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Doré Copper Mining is a premier, near-term, high-grade copper and gold redevelopment opportunity with tremendous exploration potential only 14 kilometers from the town of Chibougamau in mine-friendly Quebec. Doré Copper is debt-free and owns a 2,700-ton-per-day mill with an 8 million-ton tailings facility ready to be used. There is already power to site, and it is accessible by paved highway and rail. Doré Copper aims to produce a profitable hub-and-spoke operation of over 100,000 gold equivalent ounces per year, or over 60 million million pounds of copper equivalent by 2024. Because of the existing infrastructure and location, a low capex is anticipated to recommence production. Doré Copper trades under DCMC in Toronto and under DRCMF on the OTC. To learn more, go to dorecopper.com. That's dorecopper.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Oh, well, no, there are actually a lot of great news sources out there. They're just independent. You can, like what we're doing right now is two guys who are reasonably well informed, speaking honestly about what they see out in the world. And that's legitimate news. Or, what Joe Rogan is doing, or what Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald are doing over on Substack. Those are all really good news sources. I would say they were better than anything MSNBC ever did,
Yeah.
And they're just getting started. So I think this is a renaissance in the news industry, but I think it bypasses the big legacy news sources. I think those guys are toast.
Yeah, and this brings up a great point. Like Twitter, you get real-time coverage by real people when it's at its best. I'm not talking about the back and forth and the Twitterati, but when there's like a building collapse someplace and there's 50 people there with camera phones all tweeting it out, you get way less distorted information than you ever got from the news, which is like, all right, like get a picture of that pile of rubble. No, that one's not good. There's a guy's arm sticking out. We got to go around the back and get it over there. They were always filtering. This time it's unfiltered because it comes from so many different sources at the same time. And that definitely is a good thing for sure. Hey, one thing we didn't talk about, because you mentioned Trump. Well, Trump started a SPAC several weeks ago. He made more money in one day in that SPAC than his entire net worth. And the purpose of that SPAC is to basically full frontal assault on the mainstream media, where he's basically going to mimic mainstream media and big tech. He's going to mimic, I believe, all of the platforms that are currently leaning, shall we say, the opposite of right. And he's going to basically take them head on. And he's got the built-in name recognition, pretty much can attract 25% of the nation's population to his new platforms once they're up. What effect, if any, you think this is going to have on the ultimate debate and on further hastening the demise of the mainstream or lamestream media?
Well, we'll have to see what he does, won't we? Because it's not clear exactly what that's going to be and how well it's going to be done, because he can't be on 24 hours a day. So he's got to hire a lot of talent, and he's got to vet them so that they stay within the parameters of whatever he's trying to. It's going to be a big project, and that's his natural home. Trump as a politician is kind of veering out of his natural wheelhouse, but as a media personality, as a talking head and a provocateur, he's one of the best ever, So I think he's got a chance of being very successful with his niche audience, I don't think that saves the mainstream media in any way, shape, or form. So it could be that he helps kill off the liberal corporate media, or it could be that he joins them in that sector, and what's happening on Substack and what's happening with podcasting just goes on as it is and continues to eat the mainstream. I don't know. We'll see. It's fun to see a lot of different things like that happening. But Kerry, I will say this about politics, though. Normally, I don't think I've ever been in favor of any kind of a politician other than Ron Paul, publicly on your show. I've never said a nice thing about any of these guys, because they didn't deserve really to have nice things said about them. But I just got done watching a speech by Ron DeSantis in Florida, and my reaction was, if this is his stump speech, he's the next president. It was very well done, and it hit all the points that frustrated parents and people who are sick of vaccine mandates, things like that. Those people he hit all the high points that those guys are thinking and saying out there. So I think there's a very good chance that Trump does his media thing, stays in the media because he's making so much money, and Ron DeSantis is the guy the Republicans pick to run against whoever, whatever living Democrat the Democrats come up with. I guess it would be right now Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris. So, very interesting election coming up because there's going to be a very stark choice, which, stark choice elections don't always end well, but at least they're really entertaining. So I think this would be fun to watch if it plays out that way.
Oh yeah, it could be really interesting. My personal belief is if Trump's health permits, he'll be running again. But whether the country's had enough of him or not could well be the case.
Well, I think Trump would like to run again, and the Republicans would probably nominate him if he's the only guy. But if there's another guy, because to run against Trump, you've got to sell it this way. You've got to say, okay, I'm all of the good stuff you get with Trump, with none of the crazy.
Yeah.
And if somebody can run on that platform, that's a reasonable thing for Republicans to choose because it saves you a lot of heartache. Because Trump is just too unpredictable, really, to totally get behind it.
Yeah, he has his negatives, his liabilities, and certainly his propensity to alienate large segments of the population at large. But it's kind of his to do what he pleases with because the party's kind of belongs to him now. But a lot of people I know who might have been supporters in the past say, can't have another 4 years of that chaos. We got to put somebody in there who can actually run things better than the former president. But hey, that's politics. They'll figure it out. I just think we're hitting this precarious time, John, where they're going to taper, but they're not really tapering. I think it's time to reprise Elvis Presley. We need a song, a whole lot of tapering going on out there, right?
But the thing is, they cannot tighten, and they know that. But if they don't do something that slows inflation down, we get chaos. If for inflation to go from an illegitimate 6% / legitimate 12% right now to something higher than that is chaos. You're going to have people panic buying everything they can get a hold of out there, and money pouring out of financial assets and into hard assets, destabilizing the financial markets as it goes along. And they know that. They know that that's what they've got coming if they don't do something. But they know they can't really do anything substantive because it'll blow up the financial markets for other reasons. You raise interest rates in a variable rate, over-leveraged world, and you blow up all the over-leveraged speculators out there. So the Fed is in this box. They know they're in a box. They probably are not sleeping very well at night because they know they're going to get blamed for something. And what they did today was try to just kick the can down the road again by saying they were going to do some stuff without actually really doing it. They're still aggressively easy, and they will remain so even after they get done with these dramatic 3 interest rate increases in 2022. When that's said and done, we still have wildly negative interest rates. We still are in an extremely inflationary environment a year from now. And I don't know if we can make it through another year without the financial markets blowing up.
Hey, while we were speaking, spot gold up $7.70 the ounce, silver up 14 cents the ounce. Now for silver, that is a huge upside reversal because it just, whatever silver does in the morning is generally what it winds up with in the evening when it closes. So we see this upside of $20, $18 upside reversal in gold, and close to half a buck or 60 cents in silver. And the market's really speaking about it. But, John, to make money during inflation really isn't that difficult a task. You need an asset that's leveraged. that the costs are fixed on, and that the cost of selling it or renting it or whatever you do isn't fixed. And if you have that, you can make a fortune with inflation. And I think a lot of people have figured this out, especially the big guys, buying up all these houses all over the place, buying them out at over market value, we've seen, and then renting them out to the masses because they can no longer afford to buy houses. I think this is part of the inflationary play. And if you can come up with assets that yield cash flow, that you can leverage, and that your costs are fixed on, you can really clean up during this inflationary spiral.
Kerry, we've been saying for years, when we list the real assets people should buy in the face of an inflationary world, rental houses. We've been saying this for years, but it was always aimed at regular people. Like, this is what you can do with your family money. But instead, Wall Street went out and did it. They're out there buying all the houses that they can get their hands on because they can borrow money for nothing, literally 0% money. And yes, you buy a house, you jack up the rent on it, and your cash flow is a tsunami. And that's what they're seeing right now. So that sucks. Wall Street. Yeah, that's what we were supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're them, you're doing great. And if you're a speculator in various commodities and such, if you're a used car arbitrager, right? There's always been used car arbitragers, but now they're like cleaning up because they're buying and selling cars. They don't even need to inventory them, literally buying them and selling them off. And yeah, there's a lot of areas, remember, in any crisis, there are always winners and losers. If you can get ahead of the trend, you too can become a winner, whether it's mining stocks, whether it's precious metals, used cars, real estate, all of this, you can be a winner in it. I think that's really the lesson here, John.
Without a doubt, 5 years from now, we're going to be able to look back and go, oh my God, I needed to mortgage the house and do this, and this. There are going to be these giant opportunities in retrospect. Right now, there are some that look more likely than others, like long precious metals looks like the kind of thing that's going to work out, and the gold and silver miners. And shorting financial stocks at some point is going to be a spectacular winner. But we need to know when. You got to time that kind of thing right, because shorting something has an unlimited risk. It can go up, something that can go to infinity and you're betting against it, you just never know how much money you can lose while the thing is working out. So, but still, that's going to happen. There's going to be a day in retrospect when if we had gone all in shorting financial stocks and other parts of, maybe big tech stocks too, that we would have made life-changing money. So I still want to find that day. I'm trying to figure out what it is and where to put the big bet. But that's not so clear because it depends on the actions of people who are using defective models, who never understood finance to begin with, and who are under tremendous amounts of political pressure from a lot of different directions. And there's no way to know what those guys do when they're going to do it. And that makes the whole bet against the system play a lot trickier. But it's still a real thing, somebody's going to do it. I'd like us to be the people who do it.
Hey, there might come a time when you said, if only I had Airbnb'd my entire house, the basement, set up tents in the backyard, whatever I needed to do, brought in temporary structures, parked a trailer in my backyard and Airbnb'd that out too. I could have cleaned up. No doubt there will be that moment where you look back in retrospect and say, I missed it there again. But
there's a variation of that coming, and it's not a happy one, though. It's when all your destitute friends and family show up because you're the only one left you're the only one left with a house, and everybody needs a place to stay. So you're jamming them in every spare room, which is, that's a depression thing. And we're headed for something like that. So one of the reasons that the people who are paying attention need to do it well and need to make as much money as possible is because there's going to be a lot of people who need support when the time comes. And hopefully we could be there to help,
Yeah, let's hope so. Well, we'll leave it at that. Make sure you go over to dollarcollapse.com, subscribe to John's newsletter, ours as well. Shoot me an email if you've got a question for John, KL@kerrylutz.com. John, we will talk to you in a couple of weeks.
All right, Kerry, see ya.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.